Here's a special important message.
Hello, welcome to We Are the Road Crew, the podcast which takes you behind the scenes in the live music industry and talks to some of the unsung heroes that help us put on those gigs that we used to love back in the day. Remember when gigs were happening back in the day? Those were the days, weren't they, John? Yeah, they were. My name's Stephen Hill. Apologies for the delay. If you are a long-time listener to the podcast, you probably will be aware that we've not really been around this year. It has been a busy year for everyone, what with, lockdown and COVID and everything else. But we do have 2 seasons available for you to listen to now. If you want to go to Spotify or iTunes or Acast or wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're finding this, you can find our first 2 seasons. That is if you are a first-time listener. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back. Again, sorry for the delay, but we wanted to do something before the end of the year. We wanted to do something special. So we have got a very special guest. So I've already made cry a little bit jokingly. I'm joined by the legendary photographer John McMurtrie.
You're so kind. Hi,
John,
Stephen.
It's lovely to have you on, John. We were saying just before we started, I think it's the first time I've done an interview with someone who I have worked closely with.
Yeah, it's quite nice to be both sitting down, relaxed and not running around trying to herd some sort of metal band somewhere. Yeah, you sticking your lens in Papa Emeritus's face, me grilling him for Metal Hammer. That's usually the kind of thing that we do, isn't it? But mate, thank you so much for coming on. Pleasure.
And
really
it's going
nice.
to be a fairly informal chat between the two of us, I would say. But there's a lot to talk about. Before we get started, I want to address obviously the big issue that's been the last year or so, which is COVID. You were just telling me that you've had COVID.
I did, and survived.
Yeah, you have. Yeah,
so I'm immortal now.
I was thinking about whacking my mask on actually before we started recording once you told me that. But
as soon as the lockdown came in, I did 2 things. I joined the British Bourbon Society, and I launched the Heavy Metal Poker Club, an online thing through PokerStars. So that combination was kind of quite deadly, really. Yeah. And I think that's what thwarted the COVID, really, the amount of bourbon that I've drunk over the last couple of years.
Not the poker, though. That had nothing to do with it.
Absolutely not. No, I'm totally skinned now. But, what could we do? All of a sudden we went from our lives were constantly on the road. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 18 and, I've just gone 50 now. So, it's all of a sudden to go from, just a weekly basis, going on the road with bands and going on tour with Iron Maiden and, for everything to be cancelled. It was kind of surreal, wasn't it? It really was,
What did you do? Apart from drink bourbon and play poker?
But that was the first thing we did. I mean, I've got children, so we had to homeschool with them at home. But really, it was like Christmas, wasn't it, at the beginning? It was like get a load of cheese in, get a load of wine, have a good time. Put your cameras down.
Watch Tiger King.
Yeah, exactly. Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think I watched all 10 seasons of that. But it was kind of fun for the first couple of weeks, and then you start thinking, okay, this is a long-term thing here. Maiden have definitely cancelled or postponed the tour. Metal Hammer is commissioning up to a point, but everything was put on ice. So I had to take stock, and for the first time in sort of 25 years, I opened up my archive. It's genuinely true because it's all been in storage. I shot film for 15 years. I've got shots on masses and masses of hard drives and things. So I kind of took stock of that and started getting organised. And it was quite liberating, really. It's going through like old typo negative things and just bizarre. Yeah, it was great. All the early stuff that I've shot up to the current day, and I just got organised really. And I started doing prints and obviously looking at, from a business perspective, if I'm not going to be going out on tour, I need to earn, So, and it was good. It was good, and I've got a studio with a guy that I work with in Sussex, and we produced, a load of prints and things, and it was good. It was good fun. So that's kind of what I focused on. But, it wasn't so bad, was it? It was all right.
It was all right. I mean, looking through old photos of pretty much every single rock star of the past however many years does seem slightly more. I did my garden up, which I don't think is quite as interesting as old shots of typo negative.
I had to look through sort of the likes of Stained and things like that. I didn't know whether to put those in the bin or just file it under S. But but it was great though, and I opened up all the new metal stuff, so like Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and Deftones, all of those I toured with, and it was brilliant, and it was transparency. So you're looking through a loop on a light box going, oh my God, I remember this, Good times, really good times.
So let's go back and predate those good times.
Yeah.
So little Johnny Mac as a young lad.
With my camera.
With your camera. Well, even before, what came first, John, the music or the camera?
Yeah, it was kind of music. I got all my friends were in bands, and I was about 13, and they were having a brilliant time, and they were all my close friends. Everyone was playing instruments, so I went and bought a guitar, and we were totally crap. But my best mate, his brother had a drum kit, and my other mate was a double bass player in an orchestra, so he could play bass. So we kind of formed this band and played the Batman theme tune for about an hour and a half. I remember going down the shops to get some cigarettes and came back, and they were still playing it. Picked up the guitar, but that was my background. So we kind of all had bands, and we kind of got better and better, and as my musical ability got better, it was kind of the bands got more and more advanced. So it started off as quite indie. It was like the Cult, and then we got into AC/DC, and then it was thrash metal. And I was in a thrash metal band for about sort of 5-6 years, and we played some good gigs. We kind of supported at the Astoria and all of this. And during that, I was kind of photographing everything we did, doing band shots on self-timer. But at the same time, I went to art school and I was studying graphic design, which was like a massive mistake. Even though I love graphic design, it was like everything I was doing was in photography. And then my lecturer one day said, what the hell are you doing? You should be a photographer. You're quite good at it. You should follow that photographic route. But he said that if you're going to go into photography, specialise, do what you love. So if you like sport, photograph sport, and I said, well, I love music, heavy metal. And he said, well, maybe you should do that. And then it coincided with, this is unbelievable, that I work for Iron Maiden now, but I went to see Iron Maiden at Hammersmith Odeon.
Right.
And I met the photographer, Ray Palmer, coming out, he was a Kerrang guy, with his camera box after the gig. And I just got talking to him. I said, I like photography, and, and he said, it's shit, don't do it. It's awful. And then he said, I've got to go because I'm going to LA tomorrow. I said, well, it can't be that bad. And I love travel.
He just didn't want any competition.
No, I think that's what it was. So, from that's how I kind of decided. But to get into music photography is really, really difficult, as with journalism.
Yeah.
You've got to be quite good. Yeah. But it's a catch-22 situation. So I phoned up Kerrang, and I'd photographed a load of local bands. And I had a chat with the art editor there, and the art editor said to me, well, you need a portfolio of known bands. And once you can show you're competent, then we'll commission you. And I thought, right, okay, so then... I saw there were bands touring, tried to get a photo pass, and you couldn't. And I thought, well, that's, it's a total catch-22. How am I going to work for Kerrang or Metal Hammer magazine, my two favourite magazines, if I can't photograph any bands? So all my friends were going to Ozzy Osbourne at Hammersmith Odeon, and it was sold out, and I wanted to go anyway, regardless of taking photos. So I don't know what came over me, but I phoned up the record label and said, hi, this is Rock Journal magazine, and... can I have a photo pass for Ozzy Osbourne? And she was obviously massively busy. And she said, look, this is the fax number, just fax in your request. I said, sure, okay. So I got the fax number. So I quickly got the letter set out back in those days.
Yeah.
This is like 1988, I think, 7. I made up this fake Rock Journal letter heading and faxed it to the record label saying, we need a photo pass. And this fax came back instantly and just said, be at the stage door at 7:30. And it was like, fuck, isn't that easy? So, I got 3 rolls of film, got my Nikon, went to Hammersmith Odeon, and I got a photo pass, and I was in the pit. And then all of a sudden there was Ozzy Osbourne, Zakk Wylde. And it was like the greatest moment of my life, genuinely. So I'm there on my camera, and Ozzy stops mid-stage in front of my lens and, makes his eyes go boss-eyed and, does devil horns from my camera. I'm like, fuck, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then Zakk Wylde stands in front of me, arches his head back, and he's like, and he was like, at that point, he was like 6-pack and beautiful hair. He was like the LA glam sort of look. And it was just the best moment of my life. And it was 3 songs, then we got kicked out. And I could have gone back in to see the rest of the show. And I remember just sitting on the steps outside Hammersmith Odeon with my camera going, this is it. This is it. This is what I want to do.
That's mad.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, you couldn't do that now, could you?
No, because of the internet. Someone would Google Rock Journal magazine. So from that, I then blagged gig after gig It was like every massive gig. So I was like shooting the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Stevie Wonder. And so I then went to Metal Hammer magazine with this portfolio of the most fucking ridiculous acts. And, and lied again and just said, I used to live in America. I've now moved to London, to try and make them feel like, fuck, we better get him now.
Yeah.
And it worked, and then all of a sudden, that was back in 96, 95, I think. Mental, isn't it?
There's something beautiful about that period where you could just, rock up and try your luck.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, you got to have a bit of you're quite creative. I was about to say you've got to be a bit of a wide boy, have the gift of the gab. I'm not saying that about you. I would never say that.
And that's the thing. I look back at it and I think, where the hell did I have that from? Because now, I mean, I'm not saying I've lost, confidence, but it's kind of, I don't think I could do that. I remember going to the Rolling Stones' management office and them quizzing me on the ABCs, as in how many magazines does Rock Journal sell? And I was going, well, it's mainly distributed through the universities, and it works out about 25,000, 30,000. He said, oh, that's good.
No one ever asked for a copy.
And no one ever, and I would always say, yeah, of course, I'll send you a copy. No one ever asked. And then I would roll up in the pit, and other photographers would go, who are you shooting for? I go, Rock Journal. They go, oh, yeah, we love that. You just think, you fucking dickhead.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dearie
Genius,
me. Bring back Rock Journal, I say.
Yeah, I think so.
It's reboot it for the 21st century.
But it was a means to an end, because it was a genuine catch-22. There was no way that I could build a portfolio without, I just had local bands, and they were okay photographs. But it was, and it was a good thing in a way, because I then spent about 3-4 years photographing every band on the planet, from Metallica, Megadeth, Faith No More. It was just Soundgarden. It was just everyone who was playing during that period of like the early 90s, late 80s. So this portfolio was just ridiculous, and I held back for years before going to a magazine. I just wanted this portfolio to look amazing. But it's quite funny. But looking back at the Aussie gig, it was like, those photos were great. Those were really, really good. But every gig after that I did was terrible. So if that first gig I'd shot of Ozzy Osbourne and, had been terrible, I'd have probably gone, maybe this isn't for me. But I was lucky.
Did that make you kind of want to chase that? Because I know a lot of the photographers that I speak to, they're always like, my mate Derek, who probably works at Hammers out. I've seen him. I'll be stood next to him at a gig, and he'll go, "Yeah, I've kind of shot like 4 or 5 songs," and then suddenly he'll go, his eyes will just go, and he'll be zoomed down through the mosh pit with his camera up in the air, and he's like, "I just saw something that I felt like I had to get it." So you're always kind of.
You're always being eaten up.
Yeah, chasing that shot.
You're always being eaten up. I mean, especially with the Iron Maiden stuff, because it's like, I document everything that happens. And, that is the proper dream gig. But it's like, it would just kill me if I missed something. Hence, you do very little sleeping when you're on tour with Maiden. It's kind of because you've got the plane and you've got the gigs and you've got the hotels and everything that goes with it. But it's, it's a constant, but it would eat you up, to miss a shot. You're constantly looking for it as well. Same as you guys with an interview, isn't it? You're trying to find an angle, you're trying to get them to open up.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. What was the point where you started to think to yourself, I actually feel like I know what I'm doing, what I'm looking at, how I'm composing these shots, like where to stand, because all that stuff's very important.
I mean, that comes from the art school background. So with graphic design, before you start a piece of artwork, you can kind of see it in your head what it's going to look like. And obviously you can't do that with documentary or live. You can up to a certain point. But with the portrait stuff, I've already shot it before I've shot it. So, it's in, but whether technically you're good enough to pull it off, to kind of do that. And that's what you constantly learn as a photographer. You're constantly learning. You never stop learning at all, do you, really? No. And it's like, I was saying to you, I opened up the archive, I look back at some of the portraits, I think, what the fuck was I doing? I shot the Deftones, I made him look like Steel Panther. Now I will shoot a band for the way they look. I have a certain style, but I won't have a one style fits all. You've got to see that band and you've got to say, I'm going to photograph it this way so it matches the mood. Well, that's what I try and do most of the times. When you're not getting 3 minutes in a corridor and,
okay, let's go back to Kerrang. So you took your portfolio into Kerrang.
Yeah, well, no, I went to Metal Hammer. Yeah,
it
was
well.
Metal Hammer. The reason I went to Metal Hammer, actually, is because their features were bigger.
Yeah.
And on Kerrang, it was a lot of double-page spreads, and somebody told me that you get paid by the picture, So however many pictures they publish, that's what you get paid. So, the bigger the picture, the more money you get. So I went to Metal Hammer first, and there was the sweetest editor there, Robin Dorian. And I'd been shooting the Metallica launch party for Load, I think it was, at Battersea. And I'd sent her a couple of shots, and she said, "Oh yeah, we'd love to use them." That was my kind of in. She said, "I'm way too busy to see your portfolio." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'll drop the shots off anyway." And then when I went to see her, I just was insistent, just said, "Look, it's going to take a minute and a half. Can you please look at my portfolio, and I'll be out of your hair."
Yeah.
And she looked at my portfolio, and instead of just saying, yeah, great, dismissing me, she invited me into the office. And then in the office, I got to meet all the art team. And weirdly, Bruce Dickinson came in. I'd never met him before.
Right.
And gave us all tins of lager. And I said, "Oh my God, this is surreal. This is exactly the world I want to live in." So we were all sitting there drinking lager. And then the artist said, "Right, can you shoot Bruce tomorrow night?" And I was like, yeah. It was just like, and that's what happened. And it was like at the LA2, no pits. It was like in the crowd with your camera. But I muttered my way backstage and insisted that I took a shot of Bruce with Skunkworks, a band shot.
Yeah.
And, and they published that. And I got brownie points for not just shooting the gig. I got shots backstage too. And then it just went from there. And it was like a very short period of time. And then it was kind of, right, can you go to New York? And I was like, yes, this is what it's all about. And I kind of feel the industry is changing now, isn't it? It's kind of harder to get those trips. I remember going...
Definitely.
I think me and Dan Silver, who worked with Metal Hammer, we had over a week in Malta to review Deep Purple live. It was like, go and have a holiday in Malta when they were trying to promote gigs.
Yeah, I mean,
those were the days.
This is my era of buying Metal Hammer when I first started buying it. So you're talking about like 16, 17-year-old me obsessing over, Load era Metallica and Deftones and Korn and
I remember Korn's first.
Brilliant, amazing, and I like that was a magazine. Religiously picking up, and all the people you've just mentioned. It's like I've got their names and their, the little pictures you'd see of them.
Dan
in the
Silver's
magazine.
liver challenge, wasn't it? It was just brilliant. You couldn't get away with that now.
And Robin sitting on Pete Steele's lap and stuff. I always remember all these
every week,
and they're just absolutely just completely burned into my my psyche.
It was a good era though, wasn't it?
It was a great era. So I was going to say, it was a great era to be a fan in, and to be going to gigs for the first time. I was going to my first time going to Brixton to see Korn, or going to the Forum to see Bush or whatever. But for you, to actually be working in that environment and seeing those bands, how exciting was it for you, and how many of those big, because there were big characters.
Well, all of a sudden the demographic went from it was just kind of metalheads that were buying Metal Hammer and Kerrang to there was a much wider demographic that were into the magazines. So all of a sudden it was just everybody seemed to want a bit of Limp Bizkit, and whatever you think of Limp Bizkit now, but at the time it was. And I remember seeing Limp Bizkit. We went out to America in Texas, and we joined Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit, and Stained on tour. And because we were doing multiple features, we stayed on tour with them for, must have been, I don't know, over a week. It was crazy, It was like multiple dates around Texas, and just the reaction, seeing Limp Bizkit go out and and getting sort of 20, 30,000 people going absolutely insane. And, the UK hadn't even seen this band yet. It was like, geez, this is going to be crazy. And the same thing with Korn. We went on tour with Korn. And that's, you feel the hairs on the back of your neck, and you see a band like Korn hit the stage and you think, I've never seen a band like this before. This is just so original, so brilliant, and so bizarre. With Jonathan Davis necking nearly an entire bottle of Jack Daniels after the show on his tour bus, and then about 25 seconds later throwing it all up on the floor in the tour bus, and you just like, okay. All right, Jonathan.
What were people like, your Jonathan Davis or your Fred Durst or your Kid Rock?
Kid Rock
been in the news again recently.
He has, hasn't he? Well, I've just been working with Monster Truck actually, and they're a great bunch of guys. And I mean, take the politics out of it, they're just having a go, aren't they? They're rocking, and they're just, I can't blame them at all. But Kid Rock is he's an incredibly talented guy. I don't particularly believe in his politics, but I mean he is a phenomenal musician.
I think Wes Borland, it was Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit.
He's the kind of guy.
He's fantastic.
A legend, isn't he?
He's a great dude. And but he said it was in the late 90s, the 80s kind of came back again a little bit. Did you see that in the various parking lots across America?
Definitely in America. Yeah, definitely in America. What is in the kind of CD?
And
definitely.
The OTT nature of what was going on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we went out to join the Limp Bizkit tour, we went to a local bar, and it was like Coyote Ugly with Fred Durst and Kid Rock were standing on the bar with liquor bottles, pouring them into mouths of females. And on their tops, it was like, oh, okay, that's how it is. But, and then you talk about a band like the Deftones, and they don't roll like that. It's like, it's really weird, that whole new metal thing. And I think it was management to do with the Deftones must have been so spot on, because everything with Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, was all driven by management, it seemed, whereas Deftones, it was driven by the band,
The best band out of those lot as well, personally, I would say. That's just my personal opinion.
As I said, I don't shoot them like Steel Panther anymore.
No, I think that's probably for the best.
Well, but then, I mean, we did their first tour, me and Dan Silver. We joined them we did 3 shows in England, in the UK, and then we went into Europe, into Amsterdam. So it was crazy. And we were on the tour bus with them, and phenomenal. But funniest thing was at the London show, we'd done London, and then we're going up to Nottingham. So we all met up, all boarded the tour bus. Tour manager does a head count. We all get on the bus. Steph starts opening the drinks. We're all smoking. Steph's just like playing loads of good music. We get stuck in traffic on the M1, and like the journey should have taken like a couple of hours, to sort of 5 hours, but it was brilliant. It just seemed like 10 minutes because we were just like basically partying all the way there. Then we arrive at Nottingham Rock City, and the tour manager's going, "You seen Chino?" And it's like, no. And he does a head count, goes to his bunk where Chino is sleeping.
Yeah.
And he's not in the bunk. So back in London, Chino had gone off to get a sandwich, and the bus had left without him. I don't think the tour manager worked for them for that long after that. But it was hilarious. We got there, and I think a load of fans drove him up to the gig in Nottingham. But this was back in what, 98, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. I've worked a lot with them ever since. But yeah, I mean, they do what they want to do. They won't, they do play the game, but they've never sold out, have they? Deftones. No. That's what they do. So yeah, much respect. Out of all those bands during that era, I think Deftones are the ones that can really hold themselves high. I mean, Limp Bizkit still have the songs, but
I would always defend Limp Bizkit.
I don't know if they have their dignity. I mean, Wes does, doesn't he?
Yeah, and it's mad. The guy who dresses up like a fucking porcupine is like the one with the people go, he's the proper musician.
So he's just kind of creates this persona, doesn't he? And just goes out on stage and he can just switch off from real life, isn't it, I guess?
Yeah.
But he's a good guy though.
He's a good guy. Did you notice coming up through that period in nu metal, I mean, it was the most colourful era maybe ever.
Yeah.
Maybe ever.
Definitely.
In rock music. Like,
yeah, probably. I mean, other than the glam side of it, which that never really rocked my boat at all.
No.
But I think the difference was there was attitude, wasn't there? There was so much more attitude with the metal scene during that period.
I think even when you look at the most outlandish 80s glam bands, they didn't look like Mudvayne or Slipknot.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, so, true.
I think visually those bands were...
Yeah.
But
Slipknot, I mean...
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you must have shot those bands a few times.
Absolutely just... I mean, firstly, I feel really bad about it because after I saw Slipknot for the first time, it was in Milwaukee on a Tattoo the Earth sort of tour. Mm-hmm. And they came out with the sirens going and the masks and stuff. And the sound was shit. So it was just like absolutely brutal. But it was fucking great. Everyone went nuts. And I remember saying I'd give it a year. And how wrong was I?
Yeah.
And I remember somebody saying to me, said, seriously, Corey is the best singer in rock. And I was like, is he? Hell, And then I started to pay attention. He really is the greatest, singer in rock. And I think the way he, sort of conducts himself now is just absolutely brilliant. He's such a good person to be fronting the world of metal at the moment, isn't he, Corey? He really is, yeah.
Well, those people, the Fred Durst, the Jonathan Davis, the Chino Morenos, the Corey Taylors, they've just got that star power that I think is... Well, this is what I was going to get onto actually about that kind of the charisma that a lot of those bands have, and I think it's starting to come back. You've seen it more with bands like Ghost, and we'll talk about a few more other bands as we get into it. But how did you feel? Because when, as somebody who works in a visual medium, when you go from nu metal and you go from Cold Chamber and Mudvayne and Typo Negative and Limp Bizkit and all these bands, and then there's a kind of, when we get into the early part of the new millennium, rock music changes to, it kind of flip-flops back to blokes in shorts and long hair, and there are a few exceptions that we'll probably talk about in a minute, all of which you've shot before. But a band like Killswitch Engage, the kind of a band like Thursday, or the kind of the emo and metalcore bands, Funeral for a Friend, those bands My Chem are one of the. I would say, different, really. My Chem, in that sense. My Chem, him, and Avenged Sevenfold would be the three that I would look at and go, there's a really strong visual aesthetic to those guys. But there weren't many. I would say they were kind of the exception to the rule around that period. Yeah. How was it for you when you'd gone from years and years of Kid Rocks in the big pimp suit and stuff to suddenly going, it's five guys in T-shirts again? Yeah, I think it was more about the musicianship, wasn't it, came across. But I mean, Avenged Sevenfold, I mean, they have one of the best looks going, when given the chance to photograph them in the way they deserve. It's kind of, they have one of the best sort of looks there is. And Vila, I suppose it was just a different kind of era. And my background was always, I mean, I was kind of, at school, I was kind of like into the indie rock sort of side of it. So I kind of liked it, I kind of loved all of that side of it. So it didn't really sort of bother me too much. But it did go from like super attitude to a little bit more laid back, I think, which didn't really bother me. But Avenged Sevenfold, him, My Chemical Romance, I mean, Sum 41, I mean, that was crazy. I mean, Sum 41, I joined them on tour and they were private jetting it everywhere. It was insane, the amount of money that they were, was invested in that band, but they could pull it off. They were just an incredible band on stage. Still are, I think. I mean, it's still great. Do you think it's fair to say, I mean, something I've always thought about is maybe not so much in terms of the way a band dresses up or whatever, but I always like a band, like I think this is true of Korn, right? You can see a silhouette of a band and you know who they are. Yeah. And I think Sum 41 have that, where you could see a silhouette of Sum 41 and you go, oh, it's Sum 41.
Sum 41.
Even though they don't really like Blink-182, you would go, oh, it's obviously Blink-182. Those three silhouetted people. Yeah, definitely. Rob Zombie. Well, definitely. I was only thinking that because I did a shoot with him and it was totally in silhouette. Only because if you try and photograph him with his eyes, it's just kind of hair in your eyes, and and he's got this amazing mic stand with skulls and stuff, and But you're right. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, but I can see a visual in anything, and I will listen to music and then try and create a visual. So how would you do that with a band like, for example, Killswitch Engage, who are essentially just five fairly unassuming chaps?
I mean, what did we do? I can't remember what I did with Killswitch Engage. I think it was a rooftop shoot on the roof of Camden Underworld, to be honest. But I mean, Avenged, we kind of really thought it through. I mean, I think Emma, who looks after the PR for Avenged Sevenfold, was really pushing for the City of Evil Avenged Sevenfold thing, Sin City. And that was amazing. I mean, that was ridiculous. Shoot. Yeah, that really was brilliant. We shot it in Atlanta with kind of blank firing guns and baseball bats. Halfway through it, we ordered catering, and the catering arrived, and she just ran out, got security. The whole bottom floor of the hotel got shut down because there was live guns, and it was like, don't call the police. It's just doing a photo shoot. But that was brilliant. That was so good. Yeah, and that was all shot on film. But Avenged, they have a certain image, and we've always tried to kind of sort of come up with an idea that kind of matches.
It must be exciting to be able to get a band like Avenged who put so much into the way they look, from their logo to the way they present themselves on stage, just everything. Each individual member, you see a silhouette of Avenged Sevenfold, you're going to know that it's Avenged Sevenfold, and that shit is really, really important
massively
to them.
I mean, and they were grafters, right from the beginning. They just didn't stop touring, and musically they're brilliant, but obviously they had the holy grail. They had great musicianship and they look great. So that combination is perfect. Working with them recently, it's really nice to be around them because they've really found themselves, in the sense that they're really comfortable in their own skin. Yeah,
you preempted my next question, to be honest.
They don't over push the image too much now, although it's still there. but they're comfortable with what they do. And musicians, they're just brilliant musicians. I can tell you a very Spinal Tap story about Avenged.
Well, I was going to ask you about how different they are now, because I've interviewed Matt and Brooks a couple of times, and I've always thought, and it's been in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and I always think, well, what lovely guys. Yeah. But then I remember back reading the interviews with them in the, the kind of
they had some crazy times.
The City of Evil era. And I was like, wow,
nuts.
these guys come across as being somewhat unhinged.
Well, they weren't really unhinged. They were just kind of, they knew they were good. And they, whenever you kind of pull off something good in life, it's kind of, you want to celebrate, you want to party. And I think that was their fuel. They knew they'd just done a great gig. They knew they'd just recorded a great album. And wherever they went, it was kind of, they met the sort of people that would want drinks and, and all the rest of it. So, but the Rev, he was just like a great guy. But, like anyone, he partied too much and,
So go on, what happened then? You said you got a Spinal Tap story.
Well, this was post-Rev.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was flying out to Detroit to do a 12-page feature for Metal Hammer. And, we needed to find a location. I'd found where they'd shot the Transformers movie, this old disused train station. Mm-hmm. Spent the whole week sorting it out, sorting the location out, and then all of a sudden I got called saying it's Atlanta. We're doing Atlanta now, and it's Friday. In 2 days' time. It's like, Christ, they'd pulled it forward, so I had to cancel that location. And I got friends at Warner's in Atlanta, so I called and said, look, I need a location. I need to look really, it's Avenged Sevenfold, something really good. We can't shoot this in a corridor. I don't want to shoot it in a conference room at a hotel again. Let's find something really good. And it turned out there's a place in Atlanta called the Goat Farm, which is where they film The Walking Dead. Yeah. And it's this old Victorian sort of cotton processing factory, and it's all these warehouses, Victorian brick, broken glass. It's amazing. It looks beautiful. But it's now a TV production area. It's all closed off. It's wonderful. So I called them, had a chat, we got it all booked. This is going to be amazing. So clear it with management, it's all good. And it was 5 minutes from the hotel where Avenged Sevenfold were, and it had to be as close as possible because they were doing TV, and I think the album was #1 in America at the time. So they were, they were giving me 4 hours to do this shoot. It was just going to be brilliant. So fly to Atlanta, go straight to their hotel. Well, went to the location, checked it out, all was good. Go straight to their hotel. They're all there, have drinks in the bar, and I brief them, the tour manager, giving them a map of where the location is. It's called the Goat Farm. It's a TV production facility, and it's 5 minutes. It's going to be great. And they're like, great, this is going to be fantastic. So I get there early, get there at 2 o'clock. They're due there just afterwards. So I scout out, know where I'm going to shoot. I've got an assistant. It's all going to be beautiful. And I get the call from the tour manager saying, we're leaving now. We're getting in the runner's vehicle. We'll be there very shortly. And it's like, great, all right, everyone get ready, lights on. We know where we're shooting. Because there was a lot to shoot. It's like 12 pages. It's like you've got to do the front cover, you've got to do various portraits, various band shots. Half an hour goes past, still haven't arrived. And I say, okay, it's cool. And then it gets 45 minutes. So I call them. Tour manager answers, yeah, we're on the freeway, we're on the way. And I'm like, I don't think you need the freeway. So no, it's cool, we know where we're going, we'll be there in a minute. It's like, okay, cool. So it gets beyond an hour, and it's like, oh man, this is crazy because we've only got this amount of time to get the shoot done. And then it gets an hour and a half, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I call them at about the 2 hour mark, and they're like, yeah, we're just arriving, we're arriving now. And I said, okay, all right, I'll send the assistant down to the gate, they can show you where we are. Assistant goes down, comes back and says, there's no vehicle, the streets are empty, there's no one on the road. So I call them back and say, look, what's going on? Because, you say you're here, you're not here. No, we're here, we've pulled up. Okay, yeah, I'm looking for you. I said, well, what can you see? He said, well, there's fucking goats everywhere, and there's some fucking dude who looks like Rob Zombie, man. This is giving me the creeps. And I'm like, where the fuck are you? You're on a goat farm. And the guy in this vehicle and the runner obviously had ignored all the directions from the tour manager and just Googled Goat Farm Atlanta, and they're driven 60 miles south to a fucking goat farm. So I'm like, okay, so I ping them where I am. I said, right, it's not a goat, it's called a goat farm. It's not a fucking goat farm. There's no goats. So they all get in the vehicles. And about an hour later, they get there. I've got 35 minutes to shoot 12 pages in the front cover. So they arrive with 4 guys, and it's like, where's Matt? We need Matt. It's the singer. He's in the vehicle. He's allergic to any animals with hair. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, well, there's goats here. There's no fucking goats here. It was the most insane Spinal Tap moment. And I loved them. And they're the nicest guys on earth. They really are. And it was one of those kind of misunderstandings from a run. It wasn't their fault. And obviously they're doing TV and press and they just want to get it all done.
Yeah.
And that was, that was fun. But I've worked with them since and it's all been good. But that was fun.
You didn't turn up with any goats, didn't bring any goats with them.
No, but we did all, since Matt arrived, we were all going,
dearie me. We should talk about a few other things a little bit. Well, we'll go into Iron Maiden in a minute, but I was going to ask you, there are a few iconic shots that you've done. You believe, I think you said you believe it to be maybe the last photo shoot Lemmy ever did was with you.
Yeah.
Which obviously, with the name of our podcast being what it is, obviously I think everyone involved were massive Motorhead fans. I remember the day that he passed away. I was on the radio, I was on TV radio at the time, and it was...
We knew it was coming, didn't we? But it was such a shock. We knew that he wasn't well.
You kind of know that everyone's eventually, but I mean, the thing is...
He's going to live forever, isn't he?
That's exactly it. You did kind of think, well, I don't actually think he's actually going to die, is he? Surely.
I know.
But how was it shooting Lemmy, particularly around that time?
It was, it was still Lemmy. Behind the eyes, it was still Lemmy. But I remember he came in and he was quite frail and he had a stick. But, he was knew exactly what was going on. And then when he sort of came in, we had this studio area set up. And, and he stood on the mark. I told him what it was for, what I needed to do, and he just threw his stick away. And he switched it on and he was great. And he has that stare, he has that Lemmy kind of growl. And that it kind of the first time I shot them was like sort of years before. And I remember I wasn't exactly green, but I was it was quite nervous meeting Lemmy. It's like an absolute icon. Yeah. And I'd set up this studio in a hotel, and I remember he came in and he just stood there and he just looked like the ultimate rock star, and I framed up, focused, and took one shot, and I was just like, yeah, that's amazing. So I took another shot and it looked exactly the same. And I took another shot, exactly the same. And I said, Lemmy, do you want to kind of turn your shoulder in and just really fucking stare me out? He goes, no. I said, okay, why? He goes, because I look good like this. I said, yeah, you're right. And I remember taking all these shots and I thought, yeah, he knows what he's doing. Yeah. But, he's such a lovely guy. I remember taking a few shots with him backstage at, I think it was the Forum once, and he poured a Jack and Coke. And he's just a really lovely guy, really intelligent, really smart. But to shoot that last shoot was so sad. Yeah, so sad. I mean, he looked frail, but it was still Lemmy, wasn't it? And he rocked till the day he died, didn't he? And I think that's what he wanted to do, didn't he? Really?
Absolutely.
He didn't want to hang up his boots, did he? He just, it's and he'll never be forgotten, will he? He's made his mark, isn't he?
Absolutely.
Total and utter legend.
Yeah, completely.
I mean, the same as Ozzy in different terms, but know.
Well, I think if you talk about if you were to pick what do they call it? The four presidents, the Mount Rushmore of British heavy metal icons. Lemmy, Ozzy, Bruce Dickinson, and someone else.
I don't know. Yeah,
probably Tony Iommi as well.
Yeah, I would think so. You
can have two from Sabbath.
Slash, let's put Slash up there as well.
I mean, when you get into Americans, and I think when you get into American bands, then you've got a whole big old story.
And then we could really upset people and put sort of Gerard Way up there.
God, it's not Gerard Way over a member of Cannibal Corpse. I get the old Metal Hammer Facebook page chatting, wasn't it?
Have you started chiseling? Because we've rethought this idea. Not sure if it's going to work.
Yeah. One of my favourite shots that you've done, and I know that you're quite proud of this one, Dave Grohl and Papa from Ghost.
Yeah, that was amazing. That is
such a great shot, and I mean, you've got, it's kind of perfect in a lot of ways because you've got this kind of massive schlocky band that are on their way up, and then you've got this iconic rock star together. Perfect.
It's just like, I remember taking that photo as well and knowing, I was like, oh my God, this is such a great photo. And that isn't being big-headed. It's just that, I've got something in front of my lens that is just so TV gold.
Yeah.
This is great. And it wasn't meant to happen. I was doing a load of features for Classic Rock, Metal Hammer, and a load of other stuff, and Ghost were on tour with the Foo Fighters. And we were going to do something separate, I think, with the Foo Fighters. And I'd asked management, could we get a shot of Dave Grohl with Papa, and it was like, no way, that's never happening in a million years. That's not going to happen. It was like, okay, you know. And I spoke to Hammer and said, that's a real shame because that'd be the shot. That's the real shot. And I've worked with the Foo Fighters for years. You know, I've done so much. You know, when they first kind of went out after the what was the first album? I can't even remember.
Foo Fighters.
Yeah, Foo Fighters. You know, I worked on that, and it was great. You know, and Dave Grohl is just genuinely the nicest guy you will ever meet. And I remember coming back from a Foo Fighters trip and telling one of my mates, I said, you know, Dave Grohl is my best mate, and you know. And he just said, yeah, he thinks that with everybody. You know, everybody who's met him thinks that. Yeah. You know, and he treats people with respect. And yeah, he's just a lovely guy, isn't he? So when I arrived at the gig, it was out in Norway. I bumped into Dave in the corner. He was like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm doing this shoot with Papa. I said, it'd be amazing if you were in it. Fuck yeah, come on, we got to do this, you know. And he just came in, bounded in, got down on his knees and started praying. And
that's the
and
thing,
it was like,
it?
oh my God, this is ridiculous, you know. And then Papa kind of pulls out his arms and he's got the big sort of robes. It was just ridiculous, yeah. It's one of my favourite shots, I think. That and the Sin City Avenged Sevenfold, yeah.
Are you pleased to see the sort of, I think, the return of strong imagery in the likes of Ghost and then bands like Creeper and who else is there? Sleep Token as well. There's a lot of Behemoth as well. There's a lot of bands that are coming through now who are bringing back that kind of what we were kind of talking about with.
Well, it just works.
New
I
metal.
mean, people need to cling on to something, and I don't mean that in a kind of bizarre way. It's like Maiden undoubtedly would be huge regardless of Eddie and the artwork that goes with it. I mean, the musicianship that band have is phenomenal. But you put the two together, it's just, you know, it's the perfect package, isn't it? You know, and that's what you need. You need something to grab onto, you know, you really do. I mean, some bands go too far, don't they? But, you know, it's like sort of, So, but yeah, no, I love any band. We just did something with Merca, you know, the Scandinavian Denmark. Yeah. And she kind of has an image, but we were just racking our brains without trying to make her into a goth. So in the end, we decided to.
She is. I interviewed her very, very briefly at the Metal Hammer Awards a few years ago, and she is like breathtakingly beautiful.
She is, isn't she?
Absolutely,
she's got this deep soul, hasn't she? That
she was so pretty.
Yeah,
I was just like, this is like staring at the sun. Looking at her, she's phenomenal looking.
And it'd have been wrong.
I don't sound like a perv. I'm not perving over her.
Absolutely, but it'd be wrong to sexualise that as well. And you know, we should talk about BabyMetal because I remember going out to Tokyo to do BabyMetal, and you know, and we were adamant we're not going to sexualise this in any way because you know they were already getting a bit of a bad rap because it was young girls dressed as, you know, the way they dressed, and it was like, you know, so when we did the Hammer cover, it was all about we're trying to give them attitude, you know. And my thought process was, you know, don't call me baby. It was like, you know, grit your teeth, which is really hard to do through an interpreter.
Yeah.
So, you know, and they're the sweetest girls. They really are. They're so professional at what they do. But you're trying to say, right, you've got to really stare me out. You've got to really look like you're going to kick my ass. So whatever they said in the translation wasn't what I said. Because they would go, okay, and I would go, right, you ready? 3, 2, 1. And I would click. And, you know, Sue would look like she was hanging up some washing. And I was going, no, you've got to really... And, you know, most bands, you've got that communication and you can kind of go, look, fuck's sake, you know, just really get, you know, you look a plank. And it gets people fired up and it kind of works. But, yeah, so BabyMetal, we got there in the end. Anyway.
They are a very interesting... I mean, everything about them is interesting, I think, BabyMetal. Really I don't know if I like listening to them or not.
I didn't, to be totally honest, when I went out, and then I saw 2 nights at the whatever Normo Dome it was in Yokohama.
Yeah, I saw them in Japan as well, and it's unbelievable.
Oh my God. I mean, and the musicianship is just first rate, and then add pyrotechnics and their quirkiness. It's like, and, you know, if you were in Tokyo, you're already in this kind of weird space because of... You know, your jet lag and your just sensory overload, which Tokyo is, isn't it? And then add BabyMetal, and you're like, am I on Mars? It's like, you know, it's peculiar, isn't it?
Did you get a chance to look at the crowd as well?
Yeah,
because that was
I
the thing.
Photographed it. Yeah,
it's not often that you want to photograph the crowd, but my God, I don't think I've honestly never seen anything like BabyMetal in Japan.
What did you see? And then I'll tell you what I saw.
Well, I saw a lot of people who I don't think were particularly interested in heavy metal music, that's for sure.
There's quite a few Japanese businessmen, isn't there? Which is questionable.
There's
the demographic that follow
there's
them.
Certainly, I mean,
it's a lot of young girls.
A lot of young girls in One Direction, and I mean, it was One Direction that around in this 2015 when I went out to see them. But it was a lot of, I mean, I did a piece for Metal Hammer and we said, have you heard Iron Maiden? Have you heard Metallica? And they were like, no.
But
like Justin Bieber.
But they pose with all of them, not knowing who they are.
Yeah, and I mean, when the girls walked in, they had an entourage around them, but the crowd were... It's funny to see a crowd who obviously don't really have any kind of connection with metal, but kind of appropriating what they're being told to do by these young girls who a lot of gatekeepery types would say have got nothing to do with metal, but they would do the dance moves a lot. The whole, I was sat right at the front. So I was sat on the arena and obviously got the floor where all the people are stood, and then I was on literally the first row, so I could see the whole floor in front of me, and then the stage, and people were doing the dance moves, and then they go circle pit, and I went to the back for the last song.
Quite a polite circle pit, wasn't it?
But there was about 15 circle pits happening at the same time, and they weren't like guys with spikes, swinging there. But I was like, they've got more circle. This is like Devil Driver at Download, but bizarre, much more polite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was really, really like. Disorientatingly.
I remember the manager saying to me, he said, you have the exclusive on this. This is complete exclusive. No one will have photographs of this show. And I said, other than the 25,000 people in this stadium. And he went, no one will film. And I was like, yeah, right. Nobody filmed. Nobody was photographing anything. It's quite refreshing to be standing up. And that takes me back to when I was the gatekeeper for gigs. There was only like 3 or 4 photographers allowed into a gig.
Yeah.
And you're allowed, and now it's just a whole sea of cameras. It used to be quite a special profession that you were, you were worthy of being there to photograph a gig, and now it's kind of everybody's got it before you.
If you see someone have you ever seen anyone in a photo pit taking photos on their iPhone?
Yeah, you've got to be careful. If you don't know who it is, it could be, the guitarist's son, or it could be, the wife. There's a lot of that, iPads and things.
Yeah. Yeah,
and it's a dangerous place to be, the pit. I mean, I've got a ladder of scars up my back from Faith No More in 91 when the pit collapsed. Right. And I was whacked against the stage, and it was Kerrang photographer Tony Williscroft that got his foot on the barrier and got the barrier up to pull me out. But I remember sort of coming on music for Faith No More, and Dried Ice, the band walked out on stage, did the first few bars from out of nowhere, and it was like a steam train had hit me, and I was like bang against the stage. I thought, fucking hell. I thought, I was lucky there. Breathed out. So, wow, I survived this one. Went to breathe in and realised that the weight of the barrier was on me. I couldn't breathe. And so I started, and I vividly remember saying, this is how I die.
Yeah.
And I got pulled out.
Wow.
Then I sat in the wings taking a few photos, and the tour manager threw me down the stairs of the Astoria because he thought I was just a photographer in the wings who shouldn't be there.
Fucking hell.
Great times.
Good times. How do you feel about people like A Perfect Circle recently? I say recently, actually. Shows how quickly the last couple of years ago. It was actually 2018. But a few years ago, when Perfect Circle played, there was a full ban on mobile phones.
Brilliant.
People were going in. You have your phone taken off you if you're filming. We don't want you filming it. We don't want you photographing it. Also, there's been a little bit of backlash from various musicians. I know Corey Taylor was somebody who got a bit of an online tutting app for knocking a phone out of.
Oh, did it? Yeah,
someone was looking at their phone,
yeah.
And he knocked the phone out of their hand. And I think there's been a few times where musicians have, I think every time I die, someone got up and tried to do a selfie on stage with the band.
Threw him off, didn't
Jordan
he? I mean,
it's
just insane. But it goes back to what we were saying about Japan. They have a culture that is totally respectful, isn't it? It would kill them to think that they'd kind of wronged anybody or upset someone. So the same thing applies at a gig when there's a band up there playing their heart out, and and I think back to when I was sort of 18, 19 going to shows without a camera, and just losing myself in the moment, and I think that part of it is lost, isn't it? But I can see the appeal to it. But I've been trying to push for a lot of the bigger bands to have more signage about what the gig is outside the gig, and then you photograph that, if there's a big Iron Maiden Eddie cut out, an Iron Maiden, you photograph that on the way into the gig.
Yeah.
And then, during the gig, you just put your phone away and just lose your moment. But, I understand it. I get why people do it. It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, it goes back to the days when I started. It was like they'd confiscate cameras and, you just couldn't But now it's a marketing tool, isn't it? I guess. You know, people know they're on tour from social media. So, you know, what management is going to get rid of that, because it makes sense, doesn't it? So, but from a personal perspective, I still think a great photograph just stands out above all the crap iPhone photos. So if you've got a photo of Bruce flying through the air with an explosion, then try and do that on your phone. It's like, you know,
it's that thing that the comedian Stuart Lee says, it's more interesting things obscured by your face. Selfies, isn't it? It's like, here's the pyramids obscured by your face. Here's the Eiffel Tower obscured by your face. Here's Niagara Falls obscured by your face. Yeah, it's bizarre. But anyway, we're starting to sound like two grumpy old men.
Right.
We have to talk about Iron Maiden. John, Iron Maiden is the thing I think you're probably most associated with, certainly at this point in your career.
I mean, a lot of my time is spent sort of, being eaten up by Iron Maiden duties, which is just a complete honour. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the kind of dream ticket, really, isn't it?
So how did this relationship evolve? Where did it start, and how did it get to the place in which it has got to now?
It kind of stems back to Metal Hammer. So, you know, sort of I sort of been commissioned quite a few times to do Iron Maiden with Metal Hammer, and I'd worked with Bruce quite a few times. And we took a Bruce Air flight to Iceland. Iron Maiden were going to do a show, and Bruce was going to fly us all back in the plane. So that's where it all kind of stemmed from. And I remember doing a photo session, and Bruce was saying to Steve, you know, he doesn't faff around, you know. And I think, I've got quite a small attention span, and I know musicians have less of an attention span when it comes to photography, especially when it's posed photography. You know, it's like front cover. So I will set it up, know how to light it, and we'll just shoot it. You know, it's like, it's quick. You know, but I did that a few times, and then I remember shooting Iron Maiden when Blaze was in the band. And a friend of mine had told me that Blaze was probably leaving the band. Yeah. And I shot, I remember saying to Steve, can we just joking around, can we do a shot of you two straggling each other, knowing full well that probably things weren't, you know, things were going to change. And then Bruce came back in. But I think it was a matter of life and death, 2006, that I joined and did all the press stuff. And it was good fun. They're good fun to hang out with. They're not hard work. There's no egos. And they genuinely, you know, the rapport they have with one another is just so beautiful to watch. It's so lovely, you know, being in rehearsal spaces or, you know, production rehearsals. You know, they get on so well with each other. And to be at this stage in their career where, you know, they just seem to get bigger and bigger each time they do stuff. So to be asked to shoot and then document the tours with the plane, it's a brilliant opportunity. You know, it's the best music photography gig there is, I feel. You know, because most gigs, it's, you know, life on the road and everything comes together at some stage, whereas when you go on a plane with Iron Maiden on the side, we're all together the whole time. When we land, there's like thousands of people at the airport, especially in South America, and then it's, you know, thousands of people at the hotel, and then, you know, the gigs. It's brilliant to document. It's amazing, you know, but quite scary.
I was going to say, those more far-flung places of the planet that Iron Maiden like to...
South America.
The South Americas and your, you know, the kind of Southeast Asian places that you guys go to. The reaction there...
It's just insane, isn't it?
Wild.
But it's so infectious.
I'm sure.
You know, because every band sort of is fueled by the energy of its crowd. And I know that sounds so cliche, and someone who hasn't witnessed something like that might not perfectly understand it. But it's like you go to Sao Paulo where it's 80,000 people and they're chanting "Allay, allay, allay" before Maiden go on. And you're photographing the band as they walk up the ramp and your hairs on the back of your neck are standing up. And you can see the band feeling exactly the same thing. They are fueled. All that adrenaline is firing. So when they hit that stage, it's the next level. And that energy from the crowd comes across. You know, it's like you're in the pit photographing, and when the whole Bruce says, you know, "Scream for me," and everyone puts their arms in the air, you feel the heat from their armpits. It's quite something. Quite something. But it's, you know, occasionally it's scary. In Colombia, they played in a park, and it was a huge sold-out show. It'd been sold out in a day. And because it was in a park, there was acres and acres outside the gig that people could come to. So when we arrived, it was quite difficult to get to the site of the gig, getting through, and you could see tents all in the park where people had been camping for weeks. So instead of just, you know, you would think, just let them enjoy the music in the park. The Colombian police sent in the riot police to disperse them. So halfway through the gig, I climbed up on stage and spoke to Squid, the monitor guy, and said, I think something's burning, the cables are burning, I can smell flames. And he just pointed out and said, look, you could see beyond the horizon of people that there was this kind of wall of smoke coming in. It was tear gas, which smells like it's the most foulest smell you ever smell. It just smells like burning plastic and petroleum. It just, as soon as it hits your throat, it's like, ugh! It's incredible. And we had that all wafting over, and there's Bruce trying to sing, and it was crazy. And I think it dispersed quite quickly, but it's like, it can get quite gnarly sometimes. I nearly got left behind in Mexico City. That was a good one. So we were flying out of Mexico, and obviously when you're flying with the band's name on the plane, there's obviously, there's a lot that goes with that. People want a bit of extra money, and and I think there was a bit of paperwork that hadn't been fully completed in Mexico City. But the guys who were on board, this really professional crew on Ed Force One. They know what they're doing. They've flown all over the world. They knew legally everything had been signed off. And we were hurtling down the runway to take off, and all of a sudden the brakes went on. Like the plane stopped on the runway, and all of us jerked forward. Then the plane taxied in between the terminal at Mexico City and the runway, and we're all sitting there going, what the hell's going on? Obviously, I'm the photographer, so I leapt up, got in the cockpit, and I'm photographing. They said they'd just given us the radio message that if we take off, we'll shoot you down. We were going to send the Mexican Air Force up, and they would shoot down Air Force One. And obviously, on a tour like that, we've got Costa Rica's next show. We've got to land. Everything's got to be taken off the plane, which takes a certain amount of time to get to the show. And it's like, we need to go. We can't hang around. So they wanted us, I think they wanted Air Force One to go back to the terminal and do a load of BS to do with customs or something. But there was definitely money involved, I think. It was some sort of signature would cost. So the crew in the cockpit, which is Bruce, and it was Ivan, who was at the controls of the plane when he slammed on the anchors, said, we will park here. We park Ed Force One here. So he's parked it on the slipway between the runway and the terminal. No planes can now leave the terminal, and any planes coming into land can't get to the terminal. We've basically shut down Mexico City Airport. So all of a sudden there's armed police all around the plane, and I'm like, this is TV gold. I've got Ed Force One, guys with guns. This is fucking brilliant. So I go down the steps, I leave, get off the plane. I'm the only one who's left the aircraft, and I'm photographing. And it's brilliant. I've got guys with guns, and they're saying, you're not going anywhere. And then all of a sudden, it was like a chariot from a Roman movie. It was like, the stairs, those vehicles that have the stairs. Yeah. One of those with a guy at the top holding a piece of paper, and it's driving up this thing. And they'd got this thing signed, and it arrived, got to the plane, handed it over to the cockpit. Oh, great, we can go. I go to jump on Air Force One. No, you are on Mexican soil now. You need to go back, go through customs. And I'm like, fuck that. We're going. That plane is going. I'm going to be left in Mexico City. So I said, okay, I need to put my camera bag down then. And so I pretended to kind of loosely put away a few lenses, put my camera bag on my shoulder. I'm just going to put it at the top of the stairs. So I just ran up the stairs, ran into the plane, and just legged it down. And just hid on Air Force One. And there's all these armed guys. Like, what is his name? And they're like, who? And we left, and we went to Costa Rica. And then we were only there 10 minutes, and then Nico got hit by a golf ball in his arm, and we all thought he'd broken his arm. He got rushed to hospital. And it was like, oh my God, it's going to be riots.
It's quite the life you've...
It's quite an adventure, isn't it? Yeah.
Led, John. You were talking earlier about first getting to rock music and going to see Maiden and the spectacle of it all, now having worked with them for years and years and years. Is there one moment, you must have, I'm sure you've had it many, many times, but what is the moment that strikes you when I ask you this the most? When I say, what is the moment where you've been photographing a Maiden gig and little 12, 13-year-old Johnny Mac has gone, what?
yeah, probably.
Is there one moment that sticks out as the most one of them?
Yeah, it's either sort of Sao Paulo or Ulever Stadium in Gothenburg, because Maiden are massive in Sweden. They sell out the Ulever Stadium, which is, I think it's 70,000-80,000 people, and it's a beautiful stadium. But there's a certain point, I think it was during Revelations, that Bruce would stand on his monitors and he'd put his arms in the air, and they'd put the blinders so the whole audience is lit up. And I go up on the back walkway to photograph that moment. And I remember, and you just think, this is surreal. This is surreal, from going from in a pit at the LA2 photographing, K or whatever, to, to this is madness. But it's brilliant. I pinch myself all the time when I'm on tour with Maiden because I love it, and I'm just trying to find the next, ridiculously insane image that you can get. But I think I've talked about it before, but when you go up on that back walkway, I have about 20 seconds before Keith, the pyro guy, hits the button for the pyros to go. And, we keep eye contact, but when I'm up there, he'll pretend to hit the button. He'll be like, just let me take a fucking photo. And then he'll hit it just as I'm going down. You feel it on the back of your neck, and it's all, your hair's singed, and it's kind of, But no, I mean, but Maiden are just amazing at what they do. And I just can't wait to get back out there once it starts up again. It'll be so good. Well, we've got the new album, we've got the Legacy tour. In Rod we trust. He knows what he's doing, that man. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll all be quite soon. Who's your favourite and least favourite band to shoot? I suppose, I've got to say Iron Maiden, but it's probably Avenged Sevenfold as well. I love shooting those guys. They're just the nicest guys. You always get good photos, and it's good fun to hang out with them. But definitely Maiden, because it's, how many shows do you have where the stage changes every song, I remember working for NME, and it was I just photographed all these really boring indie bands, and there was no light, no stage show, and it's like, as a photographer, you're craving something amazing in your lens, and that's what you get every night with Iron Maiden. And then you can go for a pint with them, and it's not all bullshit. They're nice guys. Least favourite, probably Stained. Really? Yeah. They are boring. There's everything about them. He's quite an opinionated guy now, I noticed. Yeah, he's he's kind of getting quite a lot of opinions. So for someone, he's throwing stones in still glass manages to be boring, even though he's opinionated. Though I think that's the worst kind of person, isn't it? It would be. Look, visually, in a period when we were talking about Mudvayne and fucking Mushroom Heads and all these and American Head Charge. Some man in American Head Charge, the times we had with those, that was insane. Like proper insane. They're quite an intense group of gentlemen as well, aren't they? Yeah, is it 2 or 3 now have passed away? It's really sad. But, they all met in rehab, didn't they? Yeah. But they made such good music. Yeah. Chad was just a genius. They were massively into Faith No More, so that was a big inspiration. But they had that kind of Slipknot feel about them. They could have been... They could have gone on. They were brilliant, but they could have gone on to brilliance. But it just wasn't to be, was it? Because of the lifestyle, the way that they, It did where were we? Yeah. We were slagging off Stained, to be honest. So we don't have to. But don't have to carry on doing that. I remember shooting Fred Durst, and he said, "You know what I hate about the Greeks?" And I don't know, what do you hate about the Greeks? And I'm shooting through a waist level viewfinder camera, so I'm like kind of bent over, and I'm like focusing. He's back to front, he's upside down. What do you hate about the Greeks? They're just shitty little houses. And I was like, right, okay, all right. Anyway, hold that thought, look this way. And I was like, chunk, take a photo. And the food. And I'm like, okay. And it was like a list of things he didn't like in Greece. And it was surreal. Weird. Yeah. And I'm thinking Metal Hammer cover. So I'm like, okay, all right. Well, anyway, just look this way. And beautiful. That's really nice. Okay, head up a little bit. And you know what I hate? And it just went on. It was this whole list. And I was like, what do you have against the Greeks, Fred? He said, well, you're from Greek Metal Hammer. And I said, do I look Greek? And it was just the most surreal thing. And he obviously was just trying to toy with me or play with me. Right. And he thought I was from... I don't think there is a Greek Metal Hammer, is it? I don't think so. It was the most surreal thing. Yeah. What a weird guy. It's kind of bizarre. I'm glad that Fred Durst just sort of share that with you. As unusual as I but you know what? Figured he might be, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. But I certainly don't dislike him. I think he's a great guy. I really do. One image, right? You go on a desert island, whatever, somewhere, bunker. They say you can take one of your photographs you've taken with you. Only one. What is the definitive John McMurtrie photo? Oh, that's really difficult, isn't it? Yeah, you can have a few honourable mentions. I don't mind doing that. It's probably, the Avenged Sevenfold cover, although it was like a pastiche of Sin City, that was a real pivotal moment. I think, for me and for Metal Hammer. It was like sort of, don't know why they put it in a bag when it came out. They put it in a bag. It was like unbelievable. But yeah, that shot is one of the ones I'm really proud of, because I remember the lighting on that was really difficult to get right, but also getting the eye contact and the attitude, and with a band like Avenged, it's going to work. But yeah, probably that, I think. Can
I just say, I think that marked because if you look beyond that,
yeah,
you get, again, Avenged doing the Dark Knight Batman thing.
Yeah.
You got Parkway doing the Evil Dead, Back to the Future with Steel Panther, which is one of the best ones. But that was there as well, and there was the Mad Hatter with Vila Varlo as well.
I mean,
and it's
great.
Suddenly like post that, when that one worked, felt like it opened up a whole new visual world for Hammer to, because it did used to just be like a cool shot of a couple of people.
James and Lewis, the art guys, it wasn't. I think there was a whole era, especially on Kerrang, where it was kind of, you would fly out to Chicago. And, it'd be 6 minutes in a corridor with a band. There was no concept, no ideas. Me, Lewis and James would think long and hard about, what can we do for ideas to make it visually communicating, what the band was, and what Metal Hammer was. So I think it goes a long way when you get that luxury to do that. But I think that, there's still a lot of PRs in the industry who just think, give them 10 minutes in a corridor, they'll be able to come up with TV gold. And that isn't always the way. It takes a bit more, than that. Like the Nightwish cover, I think we did this thing where it was supposed to be coming out of a big top, and it was like The Greatest Showman.
Yes.
And that was Metal Hammer really pushing on that. And I wasn't totally sure about the idea, but it was kind of, okay, it'll work. So we get there, and Thomas hasn't got his top hat. And I was like, what do you mean you haven't got your top hat? That's you. You have a top hat. And it was like, well, we need a top hat, because it's supposed to be you holding your hat, and you've got a cane, and you're coming out this big top, and it's The Greatest Showman. And so, because of the way it was lit, it was lit so the hat was going to create a shadow, but you can colour the shadow using coloured lights and gels and things. And so we needed something there that was going to be a hat. So I've got this beautiful photo of Thomas with this paper plate above his head, and he's like, it's kind of surreal. And then we dropped the hat in afterwards in Photoshop.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Finally, what about the future, John? What does the future hold, do you think, in terms of your career, and I guess just the way in which we as consumers visually consume our music? Because I think the world is becoming, images need to be ever more striking than they probably ever had before to capture people's attentions. So where are you going, and where do you think the industry in general is going?
I mean, fortunately, I think there's still a demand for good images. There is. A powerful image of a band works. You see it, or if it's a live shot, you see it and you think, oh, you know what? Either if it's a new band, I want to know more about this band, or I've got to go, this looks insane, this live show. So I think it still exists. The management of Maiden certainly see it that way, that still photography is a very valuable commodity. I mean, it's definitely been diluted by social media, but I think it just makes you try harder, doesn't it? On the last Legacy tour, I was transmitting to a laptop in the first 30 seconds of the first show on the Legacy tour, so as the Spitfire came out on Iron Maiden, I was transmitting to a laptop, and they were putting them out online quicker than the guys who were filming it for YouTube were doing it. And these were like, quality shots instead of blown out horrible iPhone photos. Yeah. It just makes you try harder. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the prints is a good thing. I'm selling prints. I'll give on Instagram, I'm John McMurtrie, MCMURTRIE 666. And there's a link to where I sell my prints. Mm-hmm. But most of that stuff, I'm trying to make sure that it's not just appealing to like super fans of a band. You're always going to have that market. Put up a print of Chester Bennington, you're going to get super fans who are like, oh my God, I've got to buy this. It's a limited edition. But what I'm trying to do with the printing is create prints that look artistic, look like screen prints, and look like something to put on your wall that look cool. You don't have to be a super fan of, say, Metallica or whatever to have one of these screen prints that I've done.
And you've got a book to plug as well, haven't you?
Yeah, well, yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, On Board Flight 666, I published that in 2011, and it sold out in a day. It was like #1 bestseller. It was like the best feeling ever. I was ready for the trolls when that book came out. Unfortunately, I didn't get any. Everyone loved it. It was, because it was documenting the band over 4 years on board the plane. And it's, I was really proud of that book. And it's had 3-4 reprints and it's sold out each time. And I don't know whether the publisher's going to republish it or not. But the next step will be to do, hopefully, the next, decade that I've shot with Iron Maiden. So like Made in England, Book of Souls, Into the Legacy and this latest album. So I think, that's what I'll start doing. And maybe I'll do a book called Hit and Run, which is it's kind of a balance of a book that will be for photographic nerds, but also for fans of rock music and just, fans of that, and just photos through the years sort of thing, which could be good fun, and a few anecdotes and stories and stuff. So, but yeah, I should have done it during lockdown, but nice. I got distracted by homeschooling.
Mate, well, there's a lot of things we all should have done during lockdown.
Yes, there is. Less bourbon.
And, well, I wasn't going to say that. Maybe more poker, if anything. But anyway, poker. Mate, thanks for coming in. It's been lovely chatting to you.
It's been a pleasure.
Lovely
it's
to
catch
up.
You, Steve.
Good to see you too. Yeah, always. Don't leave it so long next time.
Maybe we'll do it again.
We should do it again, won't we?
We'll push Mel to, we're going to do some sort of ghost.
Get me on Ed Force One.
Oh, yeah, now you're talking.
Never had the pleasure.
We built a poker table on Ed Force One out of the support band's unsold CDs. I bought a Pashmina in India.
How disrespectful. Hope you bought those
I bought a Pashmina from India, gaffer taped it onto the floor over the CDs, and we played poker from China to New Zealand for 11 hours. And I had to be wheeled off the plane. It was like, because it's unlimited booze, they'll just keep bringing booze. We had a short break for a cheese board, and then we drank. And then I'm the first guy that gets off the plane to photograph the band coming off. So as the news cameras in New Zealand, you're just like, who's that drunk Frank Spencer getting off the plane?
Well, it sounds all right, mate. You've done all right for yourself. You've carved up quite a niche for yourself.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming in, mate. We'll leave it there. Thanks very much for listening. Like I say, if it is your first time listening to the podcast, we have 2 seasons of We Are the Road Crew available wherever you're listening to this, which would be Acast, Spotify or iTunes. Also, if you want to go and follow us on Twitter, it's @RoadCrewPod. Thank you very much for your patience. If you are a long-term listener, we will be back with season 3 at some point, hopefully very soon. But we want to give you something special, and I think you were quite special, John.
Oh, lovely.
So,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thanks very much, everyone.